want you to think about the worst thing that has ever happened to you because of a message you received online. Now let me tell you about Joseph Ryan. Joseph Ryan was 39 years old. He rescued neglected dogs. He took care of his grandmother. His mother called him her confidant, her biggest ally, her cheerleader. He was born 2 days before Christmas, and to this day, his mother has not taken down her Christmas tree. It stands in her living room, year-round, behind the urn that holds her son's ashes. On the morning of February 24th, 2023, Joseph Ryan drove to a beautiful home in Fairfax County, Virginia, one of the wealthiest suburbs in America. He believed he was meeting a woman named Christine for a consensual encounter they had planned together online in detail for weeks. He had been asked to bring one item with him, a knife. Joseph Ryan walked through that front door, carrying the exact object that was about to be used to murder a woman he had never actually spoken to, and then planted on him to make him the killer. He wasn't walking into a date. He was walking into a job interview for a role he never applied for, the fall guy in another man's perfect murder. And the man who wrote that script, the man who spent months casting a stranger to die in his living room, was a federal law enforcement officer, an IRS special agent, a man trained in investigations. This is the story of the most cold-blooded piece of casting in modern American crime, and of the two people who never had a chance. The wife who trusted her husband to connect it, and the stranger who trusted a profile picture.
All right, thank you.
An au pair in Virginia had pleaded guilty to manslaughter after prosecutors alleged that she was a part of a ruse to help her employer and romantic partner kill his wife and another person.
I don't know, he started stabbing her. I think Brendan shot him.
So the au pair was Juliana Perez Magalhaes, and she worked as a live-in nanny for a couple named Christine and Brendan Banfield. She told police that she and Brendan Banfield, the husband, found an intruder in the primary bedroom of the home. And that intruder, who has since been identified as Joe Ryan, was stabbing Christine Banfield with a knife.
Okay, let's take a nice deep breath, okay? Go.
It's been nearly 2 years since these killings occurred, but in court, prosecutors are putting forward their theory. They're essentially saying that the au pair and Brendan Banfield lured Ryan to the house under the guise of a sexual encounter with Christine Banfield. This is a belief that they say Juliana Perez Magalhaes, corroborated in a second interview she did with officials in late October. In early September, Brendan Banfield was charged with aggravated murder of the deaths of both Ryan and his wife Christine, and could potentially face a maximum sentence of life. And his trial is scheduled for February.
Just take a seat on the bed for me.
You just said that she didn't make
I didn't hear what he said, so.
The cot and stuff probably needs to be switched out.
Can you have someone check this in here?
Okay. What is the nature of the incident?
Check what?
The status of his wife, ma'am.
Hi, sir. My name is Dina. I'm one of the doctors here. Your wife has died. So sorry.
Where's the daughter?
Where's what?
She's still at the scene, sir. She's with the other officers.
someone else to bring some tissues? That's been nice.
Okay. We're still burning. Just a heads up. Body cams are still on.
Okay.
It's okay.
Just yell at me. I'll get out of your way.
Herndon, Virginia. Fairfax County. Money, good schools, federal careers. Inside one house on a quiet street, the Banfields. Brendan Banfield, a law enforcement officer with the IRS, the kind of man whose job is literally to catch people hiding things. His wife, Christine Banfield, 37, a pediatric intensive care nurse. Think about what that job means. Christine spent her days keeping other people's children alive. They had a young daughter. And in 2021, to help care for her, they hired an au pair from Brazil, a 21-year-old named Juliana Perez Magalhães. For about a year, by Juliana's own courtroom account, nothing was unusual. She worked. She cared for the child. Her world in that house revolved around Christine and the daughter. Then, in August 2022, everything shifted. Brendan Banfield and the au pair began an affair. Affairs happen, marriages break. Almost none of them end the way this one did. And the difference is what Brendan Banfield said out loud just 2 months later. Part 2. At first, I thought he was joking. 5 o'clock, October 2022. On the witness stand, more than 3 years later, Juliana would tell the jury about the moment the affair became something else. Brendan Banfield told her he wanted to get rid of his wife. Her exact words to the jury. At first I thought he was joking. Keep that sentence. It's the hinge of this whole story. Because every family annihilation, every staged murder, every perfect crime begins in that exact moment. Someone says the unthinkable, and the person listening decides it's a joke, right up until it isn't. Why not divorce? Juliana answered that on the stand, too. Brendan told her he didn't want a divorce because, quote, she would have more money than he would, and because he wanted custody of their daughter. Read those reasons again: money and custody. He wanted to marry Juliana. He was picking out baby names, prosecutors said. He wanted the new life whole, the girl, the kid, the house, without the financial haircut of a divorce. So a trained federal investigator sat down with the problem the way he'd been taught to sit down with any case. If Christine dies, who does law enforcement look at first? The husband. Always the husband. Which means the plan needed something most murder plots never think of. It needed a better suspect. Part 3. Casting the fall guy, 8 o'clock. This is where the Banfield case leaves every ordinary domestic murder behind and becomes something almost unheard of. Brendan Banfield didn't look for a hitman. Prosecutors proved he did something colder. He created a fake account on an adult fetish website, posing as his own wife. Using Christine's identity, her face, her name, a whole invented version of her, the account began chatting with men. And this wasn't one message. Prosecutors told the jury they spent months talking with potential targets, screening them, auditioning them. Think about what was actually being cast here. They needed a man who was a stranger with no connection to the family, would come to the house directly without ever meeting in public first, and would agree to a staged role-play scenario, one specifically written to require him to bring a knife, because the knife was the whole trick. If the stranger brings the blade himself, his purchase, his fingerprints, his hands, then when Christine is found stabbed, the evidence tells a ready-made story. An intruder from the internet attacked her, and the heroic husband shot him. The murder weapon would walk itself through the front door, and after months of casting calls, one man said yes to the wrong invitation. Joseph Ryan, 39. The dog rescuer, the grandson who took care of his grandmother, a man looking for connection online, who believed the woman in the photos had chosen him. He never spoke to Christine Banfield in his life. Christine had no idea her face was being used as bait. Prosecutors found no evidence she had ever used a dating or fetish site at all. 2 victims were now locked in. Neither knew.
If you still want to believe this was impulsive, a marriage that snapped, the next part removes that option. January 2023, a month before the murders. Brendan Banfield bought a gun, and he gave it to Juliana. Then, prosecutors said, he took her to a gun range and trained her. In the weeks before February 24th, the au pair was doing target practice with the weapon she would eventually fire into Joseph Ryan. Every element was now staged. The fake Christine account had its man. The date was set, a morning encounter at the family home. The script required Ryan to bring a knife. The gun was purchased, and its shooter was trained. One more piece. The daughter. On the morning of the murders, Juliana waited outside in a car with the little girl, watching for Ryan to arrive. A child parked outside her own home, being used as part of the timing mechanism of her mother's murder. Morning. Joseph Ryan arrives at the Banfield home exactly as the messages arranged. He believes Christine is inside waiting for him. He has the knife he was told to bring. Outside, Juliana sees him go in. She makes a phone call to Brendan Banfield, who is not at work, not away, but waiting a few minutes down the road at a McDonald's. Sit with that detail. While a stranger walked into his house to meet his wife, Brendan Banfield was sitting at a McDonald's waiting for the curtain to rise. He returns. He and Juliana take the daughter down to the basement, out of sight. Then they go up to the bedroom where Joseph Ryan is. What happened next, the jury heard from Juliana herself, the only living witness who told the truth about it. Brendan Banfield shot Joseph Ryan. Then he took the knife Ryan had been instructed to bring, and stabbed his own wife. Christine Banfield, the pediatric ICU nurse, was stabbed 7 times in the neck. And then Juliana saw Joseph Ryan move. He was still alive. She fired the second shot, the one that killed him. The medical examiner would later testify both victims were rapid fatalities, dead within seconds to minutes. Then came the part Brendan Banfield had rehearsed in his head for months: the staging. Prosecutors told the jury he transferred Christine's blood onto Ryan's hands, physically painting his fall guy into the crime. The set was dressed. Time to call the audience. Here's where the perfect plan met reality. Because staged scenes are easy. Staged panic is hard. 7:47 a.m., Juliana calls 911. The call lasts 1 second. A hang-up. The 911 center immediately calls back. She doesn't answer. 15 minutes pass. 15. 2 people are dead or dying in the house, and for 15 minutes, no one is talking to emergency services. 8:02 a.m., Juliana calls again. This time the call connects, and on the recording played at trial, she struggles through the operator's questions until Brendan Banfield takes over, delivering the script. "There's somebody here. I shot them. He stabbed her. There's several marks on her neck. What do I do?" What do I do? From the man who had spent 4 months deciding exactly what he would do. Police arrived to find no forced entry, a dead stranger, a dying wife, a husband with a government-issued firearm, and a hero story. On paper, on that first morning, the frame job worked. Joseph Ryan died as the villain of his own murder. But 2 things were already ticking against Brendan Banfield. First, detectives noticed the digital trail, the fake account, the messages. Who really ran that profile? And second, investigators who returned to the house months later found something almost unbelievable. The framed photos of Brendan and Christine had been taken down. In their place, on the mantel, and on the nightstand beside the bed where Christine was stabbed to death, were framed photos of Brendan and Juliana. Her clothing had moved into his closet. He hadn't just killed his wife. He had redecorated her out of the house.
October 2023, 8 months after the murders. Juliana Perez Magalhães was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. And that was the beginning of the end. Because a conspiracy of 2 only works while both stay silent. In 2024, she gave police a detailed interview laying out Brendan Banfield's role. In September 2024, he was indicted and arrested after a traffic stop, denied bond as a flight risk and, in the court's words, a danger to his own young daughter. In October 2024, Juliana pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter in Ryan's death and agreed to become the prosecution's key witness. In January 2026, the trial began. 3 weeks, 34 witnesses, and 2 testimonies the courtroom will never forget. Juliana, walking the jury step by step through the casting of Joseph Ryan, the choreography of the killings, and the moment she watched Brendan Banfield stab his own wife. And Brendan Banfield himself, taking the stand in his own defense, a rare and risky move. He called the accusation absolutely crazy. He performed the hero story one last time for the people who would decide his life. The jury of 5 men and 7 women deliberated 9 hours across 2 days. February 2nd, 2026. Guilty. All counts. 2 counts of aggravated murder, child endangerment, use of a firearm in a felony. He showed almost no emotion as it was read. On June 5th, 2026, Judge Penny Azcarati sentenced Brendan Banfield to life in prison without the possibility of parole, mandatory in Virginia for aggravated murder. Her words from the bench deserve to be heard in full spirit. The disregard of the life of your wife, someone you supposedly loved, is almost unfathomable. Scheming for months, luring a completely innocent man into your deadly trap, continuing on after the murders without a care, and not once, thinking of the impact on Christine's daughter. The judge called it a harsh sentence, and, in this case, a justified one. A week after the verdict, Juliana Perez Magalhães was sentenced. Prosecutors, honoring her cooperation, recommended time served. The judge refused, calling it the most serious manslaughter scenario her court had ever seen, and sentenced her to 10 years. At that hearing, Joseph Ryan's family finally got to speak. His aunt said something that reframes Juliana's entire key witness arc.
Yes, she eventually told the truth, but this could have been a very different ending. Juliana could have saved 2 lives. She chose the plot instead, and only turned on it when it collapsed. And his mother, Deirdre Fisher, speaking of her son, "My son's life was used and thrown away, seen as worthless and utterly disposable." Used. That's the exact right word. That's what makes this case different from every love triangle murder you've ever heard. Christine Banfield was murdered by the man who promised to love her, with a knife carried into her home by a stranger who thought her photos were an invitation. Joseph Ryan was murdered twice, once with a gun and once with a story, a frame job designed to make the world remember a kind, dog-rescuing, grandmother-caring man as a knife-wielding intruder. For 8 months, that lie was the official version of his death. The truth only survived because a conspiracy needs everyone to keep lying, and because a federal agent trained to catch liars forgot the first rule of his own profession: the evidence doesn't care about your story. Joseph Ryan's mother still hasn't taken down the Christmas tree. Her son was born 2 days before Christmas. The tree stays up behind his ashes, a holiday frozen in place in a living room where time stopped on February 24th, 2023. He answered a message from a woman who never sent it, and he carried the knife to his own murder. If this case shook you, subscribe, because the cases we cover aren't just about who did it. They're about how easily any of us can be written into someone else's script without ever knowing we were cast.